It is developing into a classic F1 season. The fight for 5 world titles between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. They're 35 points clear of third place Daniel Ricciardo in the standings. The next race is in Austria. Lots going on and off track. So let's cross there live now and speak to Ted Kravitz. Well, Ted, first things first, we're interested in transfers on this network. So what about Lewis Hamilton's contract extension at Mercedes? Is that finally going to be announced this week?
I don't think it's going to be announced this week, Craig. And by the way, welcome to what passes for the summer sunshine in Austria. It's been absolutely pouring down for the last sort of 16 to 20 hours. But what's happening is that the details are starting to leak out of Mercedes, and the supposed figures, we're talking between 35 and 40 million pounds a year, 2-year contracts. And these are just the rumours that are starting to seep out as figures and dates and times, length of contract starts to get agreed. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be confirmed in some sort of big home event at Silverstone in a week's time. So that's the kind of thing that we're imagining. There is some sort of suggestion that Hamilton has asked that his current teammate Valtteri Bottas be included as part of his contract to be his teammate for next year. I think that's two things: unnecessary and indeed wide of the mark, because he doesn't need to insist that. Mercedes were going to re-employ Valtteri Bottas for next year anyway. They think Bottas is the perfect foil for Lewis Hamilton. So I think that's wide of the mark. But yes, expect it's not signed yet. Maybe they'll get round to signing it perhaps in the next weekend, and we could have an announcement at the home Grand Prix for the British fans next week at Silverstone.
Yes, that's more or less what I'm hearing, Ted, that it's not true that it is all signed and just they're waiting on a moment to announce it. Still a little bit of work to be done. Don't get on the starting blocks yet, was what one high-level source told me. But what about this notion, which we've been able to stand up to an extent, that Kimi Raikkonen is under consideration to drive for McLaren next season? That's Kimi Raikkonen, who turns 39 in October.
And Kimi Raikkonen, who is being told that he's surplus to requirements at Ferrari. So if Ferrari don't want him anymore, then why should McLaren? Well, I'll tell you why, Craig, because it's if Fernando Alonso goes off to IndyCar. So what McLaren need to do is to put a plan in place that makes sure they have a world champion in their team if, and it's a big if, Fernando Alonso decides not to continue in Formula One. I think if Alonso does continue in Formula One, they're happy to either keep the current lineup, which is Alonso and Stoffel Van Dorn, or even take a chance on the British youngster Lando Norris coming in to partner Fernando Alonso. But if Alonso goes, they're pretty short on replacements. The only one is Daniel Ricciardo, and it looks like Ricciardo's not going to take that offer, big though the money might be at McLaren. So really the only option they've got is to go with a previous world champion in the form of Kimi Raikkonen. Now the only problem with that is that Raikkonen's getting towards the winter of his career, and maybe he's not as quick as he once was. But hey, they can smooth that over with some good PR. But yeah, that's what we're hearing, but only if Alonso goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll get some more clarity about Ricciardo's future this week as well. Red Bull's home race and Ricciardo's birthday. Interesting as well, though, Sebastian Vettel voted driver of the day in France. Is that an argument against the usefulness of referendum, would you say, Ted?
Well, I think that was ironic. I mean, you could argue it either way. Either people, Bottas fans, were voting for Vettel to be driver of the day in an ironic sense because he punted Bottas off and made that big mistake. But Vettel's drive back through the field from last place after pitting for a new nose and some tyres was magnificent. So I can understand why some people thought he was the driver of the day. But no, I mean, people are cutting Vettel a little bit of slack. He hasn't made a mistake for nigh on a year, and then he makes one mistake punting Bottas off the track. I think what people are more concerned about is the inconsistency of the penalty that he got for that poor piece of driving for that mistake, Craig. Vettel only got a 5-second penalty added to his pit stop time, whereas Verstappen, when Verstappen took Vettel out earlier in the season in China, he got a 10-second penalty. So people, not least Max Verstappen, are questioning the consistency there.
Okay, I mean, could these mistakes, perceived mistakes, and it's maybe Vettel's 5th or 6th significant blunder in the last 12 months, be decisive in this championship? Lewis Hamilton at the end of the race a couple of weeks ago talked about Ferrari faltering. He was pretty sure about that. Is Hamilton's clean driving the key difference between those two championship rivals at the moment?
Well, it is so far, Craig, but it'll be a brave man who would bet against one driver going through the whole season without making a single mistake. I know how hard we try, Craig, but nobody's perfect. So let's just wait and see to see if Hamilton can indeed get through the season without any mistakes and losing any points. If he can, make no mistake about it, he will be world champion, and the fight for 5 will be in favour of Lewis Hamilton. But, well, everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes Vettel made his mistake. It cost him a handful of points at the last race. There are a lot of races still to go. Plenty of points still to be won, or in this case, lost.
You don't make mistakes, Ted. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Craig.